Hello everyone, Bobbin here. You are watching my C Block series in Factorio. This is episode 4, and in between episodes I've let this run quite a bit. We're actually almost 6 hours into the game at this point according to the Evo GUI time display at the top of the screen. And a lot of people would have gotten a lot further in this in 6 hours. Mostly I've just been standing around waiting for resources to accumulate. There is a certain uh, thing I want to talk about in just a minute, but let's look at the materials we got first. I've accumulated, looks like about 400 copper plates and about 600 iron plates and a little over 1,000 landfill, or is that more? Actually, that's about 1,500 landfill. And down here in my wood pellets, it's showing that I've got about close to 800. Actually, I've accumulated more than 800 of them because the fact that there are some in the chest means that this filled up, and I also went and filled up the two furnaces up here so I wouldn't have to worry about them running out of fuel. So we've generated quite a few wood pellets. Let's talk about part of why this is so slow and a mistake that I think I see people make. Now, this is just an opinion. I don't necessarily mean to be judgmental of other people's playthroughs. That certainly is not the intent. I just want to explain what I see people doing that leads to a common problem, and that is overbuilding. There is a certain temptation when all of these materials come through slowly to say, well, let's expand the base so that we can get more materials so that we can continue to build and get bigger. That is ultimately the whole point of this, is to build a bigger factory, and to do that we do need more materials, we do have to get more power going, we have to get all this stuff going. But to do it too quickly, I think, is what leads to this massive power problem that you often see people have, where they start transitioning over to steam power. They get into this endless cycle of building something, and then the whole power system just sort of collapses, and they've got to go, and it's not the end of the world, but they've got to go and rush around and fix things for a long time, trying to get it back up and going and stable again. And then they turn around and build something new, and it all collapses again. So let me talk about a little bit on where we're going to go with this and how I hope to avoid that. My main goal is to try and focus specifically on efficiency improvements as we go through so that we can do more with the power we've got. And I'm going to build up incrementally, and I am going to go to steam power fairly soon, I think, but I'm going to do some research first that will get me some efficiency gains. And I'm going to do a little bit of changing around the way the base works so that if the power is insufficient to feed everything, certain things just sort of automatically shut down before the power system does. And so we never really have this thing come up to where all the power is gone and it's going somewhere, and I don't know where, but it's not going into producing more power. What I'm going to do is, first of all, in this episode, I do want to automate research. Then I'm going to start rearranging some of the base. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set up a fluid bus, which at the moment it's only going to have 3 fluids on it. That's going to be this oxygen and hydrogen, which are still just going to get thrown away. But I am going to go ahead and put them out on a bus. The oxygen will get used fairly soon, I think. Some of it will anyway. I'll have it on a bus where I can tap it. The other thing that's going to go on there is the mineralized water. And I should emphasize this is not a long-term solution. Eventually the amount of mineralized water that's going to get used here is far more than you could ever put on a bus. But the point is, by putting it on a bus, I'm able to reduce the use of certain machines. I will probably take my slag that comes through here, and I'll run it all through one crusher because uh, while I said in an earlier episode that one crusher could handle all the slag output from 2 electrolyzers. That's absolutely true, but it applies to the burner crusher, which operates at a slower speed. This has a crafting speed of 1.5, where the burner one has a crafting speed of 1, which means one of these can actually handle all the output from 3 of these. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to consolidate the output from these 3 machines. I'm going to run it all through a crusher. Then I'm going to run it all through just one liquidizer or liquefier, and put the mineral water on the bus. Now I'm not going to run all of it through there because I still want to produce landfill. I'm probably going to use a couple splitters to split off 1/4 of the crushed stone and send 1/4 of it to produce landfill, and the rest of it's going to produce mineralized water. The mineralized water will go on a bus, and by the time I get this done, I'm hoping to have a key research done that will let me regulate the flow of that mineralized water, so that primarily it goes to algae production, then the overflow goes to metal production. And most of it in the short term will overflow, but if for some reason the algae consumption starts requiring all of it, then all of it will go there and it will starve the metal production. And the reason is because this algae ultimately will be providing fuel for steam boilers. It won't right away, but I want to go ahead and get the infrastructure set up to where it works that way. Then, if we start to run short of power, or really not power so much, if we start to run short of power, what will happen is the rate of production of slag will slow down, because these machines are the biggest power hogs. When that happens, we'll start to get less crushed stone going through, we'll get less mineralized water, and it will starve this system up here that's producing metal, preferentially over the system that's producing fuel for power. That's the idea anyway. We'll see if it works in practice. I think it will. So let's go ahead and get started by setting up some research. And I'm just going to set up a temporary location. I'm going to automate it a little bit. I want to go ahead and set up 3 assembling machines for that. I'm just going to put it down in a corner down here, sort of out of the way. This is not a permanent location for it by any means at all. So I'm going to need 3 assembling machines, and I will go ahead and put down my lab again. Just put it right here. And so we're going to go on these assembling machines. The first one is going to be producing electromagnetic cores. This one's going to be producing electromagnetic coils. These combine to form a sacrificial electromagnet, which is the replacement for a red science pack. And then that's going to go into the research facility here, the electromagnetism lab. Alright, so we're going to need some inserters to operate all of this. And I made way more than I need. That's okay, they'll all get used eventually. Even though I'm not using them as my preferred way of inserting things in most cases, they will still all get used eventually. Okay, so we'll put that there, and we can start powering this. Looks like 1 pole will cover the whole thing. I am going to need to get a couple of chests down here. Let's see, 1 more chest. And I'm just going to manually put iron in one and copper in the other. So, it needs to be in a 2-to-1 ratio. Let me just pull all of my metals that I produced out of there. A decentish amount, I guess, for this point in the game. Since I haven't, by this point in the game, I don't mean in terms of time, I mean in terms of how much I've actually expanded my facilities. So we'll put those in there, and this one in here. Here. Okay, before I fire this up, let's look at what I did. One of the mods I have installed is Research Queue, so I've sort of planned out my research a little bit. It's going to research basic chemistry first. That enables fluid control. It also enables cold processing later on, but for now I want it for fluid control. Fluid control is it gives us a couple of valves that we can use to control the flow of fluids. It's not as nice as having a circuit network hooked up to where you can actually go and make better decisions based on levels. The one that I'm most interested in the short term is called the overflow valve, and what it does is if you have a bunch of pipes in a line and you have an overflow valve, let's say right here, I'll just put a pretend this belt is a pipe that continues that sequence, but instead of a pipe it's an overflow valve and it's pointing in that direction. It will let fluid flow into this side provided that this side is at least 80% full. If this side is less than 80% full, then this side is blocked. And that gives us a means of controlling how we're going to split up fluid. It allows us to prioritize some things over others. The most common scenario that I have used it for historically is for clarifiers. You basically put one here and you go ahead and put your clarifier on the other side, and your clarifier is just throwing away excess fluid. So that lets you wait until the pipe is full before you throw things away. You can also use it for gases, of course, so you can use it on these flare stacks. But that's what we want out of fluid control right away. The next bit of research after that is it's going to go to wood processing 2. This makes our wood production or fuel production more efficient. Coal processing makes our fuel production more efficient again. Then steel processing will enable steam power 1. This makes our fuel consumption more efficient. And so all of this is about improving steam power. First we want to control fluids, then we want to control the efficiency of our steam power. So we're going to increase the efficiency of steam power before I ever build any of it, really. Then we're going to move on to washing and sulfur processing and slag processing 1. These are necessary for setting up the sulfur cycle for making metals more efficiently. So if we look at this recipe that this is using here, it's converting 200 mineralized water into less than 2 pieces of ore here, and 200 mineralized water requires 20 slag, which is equivalent to 10. Is that right? It requires 20 crushed rock, which is equivalent to 10 slag. So 10 slag gets converted into really less than 2 ore. We can do better than that. Once we get the sulfur cycle running, we can make our metals quite a bit more efficiently. It will also open up the ability to produce tin and lead, which are necessary for us to progress. So that is the particular order we're going to do the research in. Let's go ahead and get power routed here. So this will start producing our research packs. Looks like I want to make sure that it actually does start producing one on its own, and then I'll take and dump the ones I've got in there. Okay, so it is producing. We'll stick that in there and it will start doing the research. It's going to be slow. There's only one lab. That's fine. It's not a huge thing. I didn't go and leave the game running overnight or anything like that. I may do that in the future just to get some more materials, but for the moment I haven't. One other thing I did, nothing any big deal, I did take and move these windmills out of here in preparation for changing some stuff. They're all now down on the line. So let's pull our sand out of here and start doing, I've probably got almost 2,000 landfill. I want to go ahead and expand out this way over here so that I can get some more space. I'm going to end up moving all of this stuff in that direction so that I'll get room to put in a fluid bus here, and I want the fluid bus separated some from this. I'm hoping that going ahead and putting in a bus early even though it may not be the final base, it will help me keep a little more organized. I'm less concerned about space than I am about keeping things a little more organized, because eventually I find that my base just gets sort of really packed. I don't like to go and sort of expand out in little random directions to conserve landfill, and it's not really necessary. So I'm not really planning on doing it. I'm just going to try to keep it mostly squarish. It won't be perfect, but let's see here. I wanted to rotate that to get the right texture. And let's just expand this out. Just to be on the safe side, I think maybe one more strip here. And we'll save the rest of that landfill for later in case I really feel I need to expand somewhere. And let's go ahead and run power poles around the perimeter. One use for these wood pellets is to make power poles. They're mostly for fuel, but if I want power poles, I don't want to forage forever to get them. It uses wood bricks instead of wood, but that recipe has been changed. So even though I have wood in my inventory, it's going to use the wood bricks. Let me just go and run power around the perimeter here. I mean, this isn't exactly an efficient use of my power poles, but it means that I will have power available on tap from anywhere along the edge. And I can remove these down the center. Okay, so I want to move all of this metals production kind of out here a little bit, and I really I hate picking up all of this stuff and rebuilding it out there. I don't know a better solution. I also don't know precisely where I'm going to want it just yet. So, oh, I do probably want to go ahead and expand my landfill just a little bit more up top too. Let's go ahead and do that. And I can go ahead and move the power poles too while I'm at it. Alright, so how far back to move it? I know that I'm gonna, right now, if we look at the electrolyzers, I've got the hydrogen and oxygen coming off right next to the machines. I'm going to push that out this way, and that's sort of going to define where I build my fluid bus. So I'm going to be going out probably at least, and I'm going to have to leave a little space for it. It's probably only going to be maybe not that many. I don't. I'll tell you what. Let's just move it all the way out to the end here, and that will leave plenty of extra space. It'll just be a few extra pipes to run to reach it if it doesn't go quite as far as I need, or if it goes a little too far. So that's not the end of the world. So let's take and I'm going to mark this. Let's see. Let me shrink this down to 2 by 2, and I will mark where. Is that 2 by 2? I guess it is. I'll mark where the furnaces are going to go out here, so I keep it in line with where it was before, because that alignment is fine. There we go. Alright. And I'm just going to probably work this backwards. So let's take and put the furnaces down over here. And next we'll move these things. Oh, I should probably, while I'm at this, make this a little neater on the outputs. You can use splitters to split these outputs a little nicer. So I'm probably going to go ahead and do that while I've got it here. Let's, since I'm doing that, let's just go ahead and plan it that way. Alright. So I need to have my inputs going into my furnace here and here. And these will come off of splitters. And this splitter, you got to worry a little bit about, they only work on sort of one direction on the filter, so hopefully that's the right direction. Yes, we'll get the saphirite coming off on that side on that one, and the steartite coming off on that side on that one. And we'll run this through. And that will just leave the crushed stone on this belt. So to get the material on it in the first place, I'm going to have to run it up a little bit more. So we'll put these on here, and I don't really think I need to have that much belt used there. So we'll pull out of there and pull out of there. Now I don't need to filter on these. I can just dump everything on the belt and it will get sorted that way. So one for saphirite and one for steartite. And so we're going to move these. Will still have to stay this way to split them. I think that'll probably be the most effective way to do that. Don't have to. I mean, I could put them and do this sort of arrangement, but I'm not splitting as many things, so I don't really think I want to do it that way. Okay, so this one is going to be saphirite ore, and this one is going to be steartite ore. Now, the liquefier I'm not going to put back just yet. There's going to be a pipe going and feeding that with my mineralized water. And this is going to have to come back a ways. Alright, so let me go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and pick up this pump. I don't need it here anymore, I don't think. And I'll go ahead and pick up the crusher and all these things going on here. So let's go ahead and put our landfill production down here. Landfill production, we'll just put it down a little lower. And this one is a relatively simple build. It inputs, you know, we're going to have lots of extra of these compact loaders. So let's not use an inserter. Okay, So our landfill will go through there. And let's go ahead and pull these out. Now the algae production, I guess I'll move it as is. It's not quite going to be in the same spot horizontally. That'll be okay. So green algae and the mineralized water inputs on this side. So mineralized water inputs, I'm going to move this a little further back to keep it all nice and lined up. And there's pipe segment on there. Green algae, so mineralized water going in there. And we'll do this same sort of arrangement, but I'm going to bump this up just a little bit to make some more space. I think I want to make it a little bit more to where I can expand my production just a little bit at some point. I'm not quite ready to do that, but so carbon dioxide is now going to have to go in there. That's going to be a little inconvenient, I think. Let's move this here. And I'm going to have to allow a little extra room for piping here. So let's go down to this point. Am I running out of... I sure am. Alright, so not mineralized water, that is not what we need. This is converting algae into cellulose fiber. Okay, and it's going to output it. Just tell it to output it like that. And that's going to go into this assembling machine. I'm trying to think if this is really quite how I want it, and it doesn't matter because I can definitely rearrange it later if I want to. So let's go ahead and put it here, and that's going to make wood pellets. So we will just like that. And the output for this machine is going to go and make carbon dioxide. And I know this isn't how I want it in the long run for sure. I'll just deal with it as it comes up. I could maybe do it this way, and it probably looks, well, that is nasty. I don't want to do it that way over the long run, but one thing I'm sort of trying to do here is leave an option of stacking up another one of these algae farms over on this side. And so I'm sort of without having to go and put it way out here and deal with all this machinery. I'm gonna have to come up with a nicer way of doing this at some point. But for the moment, this will work. So we'll go ahead and put this up like so. And let's go ahead and hook power up to all these things and make sure that everything is all powered. and then I'll start going through each one of them one at a time and making sure that in addition to being powered, they actually do what they're supposed to do. So wood pellets in there, wood pellets in there. I didn't actually set up an output to these, did I? So that's going to be a problem. Do I want to do anything? I think maybe I do. Let me think about this for a second. I would like to maybe put the output of these furnaces onto a belt. They're not quite far enough apart to make the belt. Tell you what I'll do. I can move this one down one and go ahead and refuel it. And let's go ahead and take up those bricks as well. I don't need them for marking a spot. And I can take and put my metal that's coming off here onto a belt. And run it out that way. It's a little inefficient to be using a lot of belts this way. It's not going to matter for just one, but I don't want to do that over the long term. In fact, why don't I just truncate that? And we'll just put a chest here for it for the moment. I'm not going to put it on an actual bus at the moment. The nice thing about saying I'm going to use a fluid bus is that the pipes are relatively inexpensive. Belts are expensive, and at this point I just don't have the sort of materials that I would want to do that. So let's go ahead and save some power by not using inserters on these. So we'll have these come up and we'll have copper on one side and iron on the other. That's pretty drastic compared to a bus like you might see people set up in a vanilla game where you got like 4 lanes of iron and 4 lanes of copper. I've never set one up that big, but if by comparison this is paltry, it's like a tenth or an eighth rather of what you'd be looking at, and there's no way this belt is going to be full for a long time anyway. All right, so on this end of it, let's start taking all this out, and let's go ahead and construct that bus. So we'll pull this off of here and start disconnecting these pipes. Okay, and I should go ahead and hook the power back up on this so that the research can continue. Okay, so I want my hydrogen and oxygen to come off of here. I'm going to leave the spacing between these for right now, but the way that I'm pulling it off, I could actually just cram them together. You know, let's go ahead and fix it while I can. Let's say I can leave it, but really there's no good reason to leave it. So let's go ahead and probably pull all of this as well, because I'm going to need a place to put my power poles. Okay, I need... Where'd the electrolyzers go? It's kind of hard to find things in here sometimes. Alright, so we're going to put them down here and here. They're all packed in. And I'm not going to use the extra underground there yet. Okay, so we finished wood processing 2, and we've moved on to basic chemistry. So let's take the the hydrogen, and we'll go ahead and make it the, actually, let's take the oxygen and make it the one furthest out. And then we'll take the hydrogen and make it just a little closer. So, hydrogen and hydrogen. Probably safest to go ahead and do that so I can make sure that I'm hooking up the right ones. And oxygen and oxygen. These can be, I said in an earlier episode that these couldn't be right next to one another. They can be as long as you immediately go to an underground. It's just that when you do that, you're sort of automatically carrying with it the implication that you're going to carry them out quite a bit. Okay, this is not quite going to work, I don't think. I'm going to have to move my hydrogen maybe just a little closer here. And it's because they're adjacent again. We'll deal with that. I'm going to probably put the mineralized water in between these two rows. So let's go ahead and all right. So we'll just leave that be for now. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my flare stacks out here. Flare stacks, I've got them in my inventory. And we'll just put them here and here. And I need to hook one of them up to hydrogen. And one of them up to oxygen. Let's make this one the oxygen. If it's out a little too far. Actually, that positioning is good though. So let's go ahead and put that there and that there. An empty spot. The reason the positioning is good is when I get fluid control, I'll replace that pipe right there with the overflow valve. And hydrogen there. Just like that. So now we have all of our hydrogen and oxygen in position here, and it's still just being thrown away, but eventually we will be able to do something with it. So we can power the flare stacks there, maybe there. Okay, so we got all this going here. Let's I don't want to put most of this stuff like slag and crushed stone will eventually be very high volume materials, and everything's going to need an independent source of it, so it's not going to go onto a bus. But I'm going to use some of the space in here to set it up as, well, to consolidate where it is. Alright, so here, and it's not really using both sides of the belt effectively. That's not going to be a problem because it's all going to get crushed up pretty quickly, I think. I may have to go and crush some of it to clear out the belt when it's done here, because this is going to just barely keep up. Okay, so let's take and rotate that there and use this thing to get it in. And go ahead and get that started. I'll need power to do that. So this is now going, and we're going to take the output of this, and one thing I did not do that I probably should have, we'll see. Tell you what, let's put the liquefier down, because I need to have just the right spot for it. It's going to go, that will work, so I don't have to use any extra belts. I was afraid for a minute there that I would need to use some extra belts for it. That's not the case. So mineralized water is going in there, and let's take, and the reason I put it where I did was because I didn't leave space between these for actually getting the water through to the other side, and so I can't use the same water line unless I do something weird like put in some additional land. I'd rather just go ahead and put in another pump since I've already got one. We'll put it there, and then we'll use an underground to connect that up. So now we've got water coming in. We don't have power, but we'll fix that. And the positioning's still not great on that. We'll go ahead and put it here, and I can run this right there. And so this will occupy that position on the fluid bus, in between the oxygen and the hydrogen. So I'll just leave some loose ends there. So I need to go ahead and hook that up here, though, and here. So to get it here, okay, so we have that going in there now. Don't have any carbon dioxide running. Let's go ahead and pop all of these pellets in there. And hopefully, I don't have the recipe set on this. Carbon dioxide, right? This one. Okay, so this is sort of running. I'll have to check it again in a minute. Okay, so the other place that I need the mineralized water is over here. At the moment, I'm still working on fluid control, so I don't have the valves, and it's going to be a little wonky as to where it goes. That's fine for just a little bit. Out of undergrounds. And I'm going to be a little limited on stone for that, so I'm going to have to do something about that. This is also going to have to change now that I think about it. Yeah, before we get too far, let's change this. I need to move this up just a little bit. Man, it's going to get ugly if I start doing that. Let's go and pull these out and move the pump up to here. And we'll put the liquefier here. The reason I'm doing this is I want to split off this because I've got to send some of it over to landfill production. So let's see. This is making mineralized water. And I'll need power. And I was going to use a couple of splitters to go ahead and quarter this line. So we'll take this and bring it up, and I'll go ahead and merge it in there. And then this line here can go out to that. I do have some underground, so we'll go underneath the... Not quite lined up, but that'll be okay. Okay, so are we getting our landfill produced? Let's just toss some in there to make sure that it's getting enough. Yes. Okay. And mineralized water. I haven't run it through here yet. I've got to make some underground stone pipes. Alright, so we got mineralized water going in here now as well. Set the recipe on that. Alright, so we got our extra material coming out here. I can either send it all the way back over here, or I can just turn it into landfill. I think I'll go with the landfill option. There we go. So it looks like we moved all this stuff out. It's sort of planned out. We haven't really added anything except for the research, but it's planned out a little better. We did get the fluid, so let's go ahead and put in our valves. They show up over here. The one we're interested in is the overflow valve, and I want 3 of them right now. Let's see. Alright, so the first one I'm going to put here. So this is only going to produce metals if this pipe is 80% full. Which is kind of interesting how empty it is right now. I'm not sure why it's as empty as it is. That implies that this is consuming all the mineralized water. That's obviously not the case, but it may just be that it has a little bit of a backlog and it needs to fill the pipe up a little bit. We can stuff some stuff in here to make that happen a little faster. Okay, the other 2 overflow valves are going to go over here. They're not going to really change our efficiency on these at all, unfortunately. But what have we done here? We've eliminated 1 crusher, we've eliminated 1 liquefier. That doesn't really save us a ton of power because they only use power when they're running. It does save us the drain on them. They do use that much, and the total drain on these is about 7.5 kilowatts. So pretty insignificant, but we can use those machines somewhere else. Really, this should run more often because before one of these was being underutilized. So we're running machines a little more overall. So for the most part, we're using more power, but the power that we're using is more efficiently being used. So we are having a little bit of a brownout right now because it looks like we're only able to generate about 1.4 megawatts from wind. But we've got the base back up where it was. It's a little better organized. It's a little more efficient. And we're doing research now to get all of this stuff going better in the future. The current research that it's doing is coal processing. This is part of the efficiency for steam power. Once I get all the steam power stuff done here, I will have to smelt up enough steel to make a boiler Mark II and a steam engine Mark II. And at that point, I will be able to start using steam power. I think before I do that, I'm going to have to expand this production right here by maybe 1 algae farm. I'm only going to put in one steam engine initially. And the reason for that is I want to, instead of switching to steam power, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use steam power, initially at least, to supplement the wind power. So when the wind power isn't quite enough to keep everything going, and that will be almost all the time, it'll be running steam power, but the steam power will be at pretty low utilization at first. What I want to do is I want to work on expanding my efficiency before I start expanding my production. So anyway, that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.